something we all deal with in this industry is experiencing burnout. At what point does burnout stop becoming something that you can ignore and become something that you have to address?
Burnout is one of those things where it's completely necessary, I think. If you're doing anything for long enough, you will suffer burnout. I think at a certain point you have to either force yourself to go along with it or you have to stop everything. Burnout is one of those things where I think you have to confront it.
I will say I'm one of the people who thrives on positive stress, on eustress. If it's burnout because I've got my hands full with things that I enjoy doing, that I find enriching, then that's kind of what I live for. My ideal schedule is packed back to back. I have no time to think about anything other than what's in front of me, because when it gets dark for me is when I don't know what I'm supposed to do, when I am finding myself at a lack of work. That might say something about my mental state. I am definitely a workaholic. But I don't know, I think burnout is just, for me, it's when I get stuck with things that are too tedious, that I don't feel like are the best use of my time.
Yeah, I was about to say it also very much depends on what you classify or call a burnout. Some people might refer to a burnout as, oh, I'm going to practice for the 4th time this month and we're playing the same songs I've been playing for the past 3-4 months. That's not really burnout, in some cases. I'd say that it really depends on the person and how they define burnout, because if you're playing the same songs of practice for the same weeks, months, and you can still change up what you're doing a little bit or find interest in how you're doing it a little bit better.
I think burnout has the potential to really create innovation, because a lot of times when you're burned out, for something like practice, you're like, okay, we've been playing the same songs in the same order for months now. I'm burned out. Let's change something. Where most people, when they're content with the way things are going, they're not having that same desire to want to change anything.
I only experienced burnout one time, and it was when, I don't remember when it was. I was writing some bass lines for Glass. I was like, damn, why does everything sound the same? So sometimes you have to have a nuanced look at things. And that's how you really get out of burnout. Me personally, you just look at things differently and then take from other people, do what they do, and then take from other people, do what they do, and then you will no longer be burned out because you've learned so many different techniques that you can add on to each other. And then it's like Minecraft. That's all I gotta say about that.
Comparing burnout to Minecraft is wild.
Literally the building blocks.
Because everyone is theoretically in charge of their own means of production, we're not necessarily working 9 to 5, come home, forget about work. We're encouraged to always be doing more, making more money, and also to enforce that, there's a culture of positivity. To some extent, a romanticization of burnout is how I think about it. You kind of romanticize, I worked a 60-hour shift this week.
Yeah, it sucks to live in a republic, a democratic republic and all that. But then you look at China. I watched one guy that's from China. He's South African, and then he moved to China and lived there for a long, long time, taught English. And and right now China has this big issue because when you are under a dictatorship that controls basically everything you do from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, even when you're sleeping, people are just doing these revenge kills on random people, like children, especially children, because they view it as, oh, this child's young, they gotta live a long life. I'm already old, and the CCP's already got what they want for me to do. So it's like, oh my God. So yeah, China is basically going through the same thing, just in a different mentality of over controlment, I think. And so Yeah, I guess they're just burnt out. And kids will do it too. It don't matter. I mean, really, you can see all of the videos. It's just horrible. Them people need to rise up. Rise up, my fellow Chinamen.
I was just talking about being tired from career and hobbies.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Fair enough.
Look, I had Mason on the talk of children killing earlier, talking about Fallout, so I think that's where his mind went to.
Fallout 1 and 2. No, it's real. I'm just talking about burnouts. He was talking about social burnouts. I had to say something. I can correlate it back to video games for you then. It's like...
No, I mean, that's fair. Like, there have been nets put up at different facilities on the Eastern Hemisphere because employees have just tried to commit suicide mid-shift, like on their lunch break. And they had to put nets there in order to stop them so that they could maintain quotas and maintain employment status for all of these people that are not being paid enough to do strenuous labor that would put most sane people in an institution. I'm sorry, that drawing really distracted me.
If when burnout hits, how does it affect creativity? Like, do y'all get burnt out artistically?
All the time.
Frequently.
I know, like, there's, for a very long period of time after, like, the whole In Dying Eyes hiatus, there was, like, a solid year and a half where I didn't write any type of music because I was just kind of burned out from that whole thing. And artistic burnout is something that definitely, I feel like as artists, we're kind of predisposed to that. I think it's something to where most artists don't create like regular things. Most people create art when the inspiration hits. And sometimes, or at least for myself, I'll have these like big pushes where I'll have a big artistic push. I'll maybe write 2 or 3 songs and then there'll be nothing for like a large amount of time. So I'll just kind of have that burnout.
That's funny that you say that because I feel like I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I definitely did feel a little bit of burnout after that whole In Dying Eyes situation, but at the same time, the way I viewed it for myself was like, I came this far, I can't give up now, I can't quit now, I gotta keep pushing through it. And I think that mentality in some ways actually made me become a better musician and person because I still, learned to push through it, even though there's a lot of times where I was just, fuck, man, do I really want to keep doing this shit, or do I want to like strap myself down, go back to college, get a really decent job or something? But I stuck through it. I'm still sticking through it. So that's interesting you said that. And I'm not saying that's necessarily healthy to do, but it worked out in my situation because I love the stuff I do now more than anything else I've basically done. So.
No, and there's value in that because I feel like a lot of artists, even just in the scene, can say that for themselves, just not on a microphone.
It happened to me.
I wonder if we need to get more specific with our language. For me, burnout implies doing something until you are exhausted with doing that thing. Like for the In Dying Eyes situation, that's more like a break in momentum.
You're right.
Because I always find with specifically creative things, the more I do, the more I make it a habit, the easier it becomes. Where I hit creative blocks is not when I've been writing the most, and then I hit a point that I can't write anymore. It's when it comes time to actually apply that, like record the song. And then I have this period of time when I'm doing no original efforts. I'm not writing any new lyrics or melodies. I'm just producing. I'm listening to the same thing over and over again, mixing it and publishing it. And that's when I hit the space of what do I do now?
Is it a matter more of saying something you haven't said or expanding on what you've already said?
I always have to say something new once I've done something. I'm content to revisit it later, but I commit to a song once I've said everything I have to say on that, or I commit to an EP. I don't know if an album process is different. I've never done an original album.
Burnout's different for everyone, and it's so wild. I don't really get burnt out too much, but also I'm not doing a lot of songwriting, Like I said, I just take from other people, and use it. But I'm not like playing the same thing they are. It's just technique and stuff, and like, cause I don't know music. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know how to read that. I mean, I know the frets, but that's it. But I don't like to do the frets. I like to just learn these techniques, and then you can use them all over the place, depending on what tuning you're in. And so, like, I think as long as you keep expanding yourself and expanding your songwriting capabilities and everything, I think you could reach your burnout. I think any point, like you said, you do something so many times, you can. But as long as you keep expanding, you might never reach it again. You never know.
I feel like burnout can also come from within as well, depending on if you put yourself in a box or not. Whereas that's something the Impulse Machine really doesn't do. You guys don't put yourself in a genre-labeled box. You do whatever you feel like doing. So in a way that I would say makes it much less likely for you to get burnt out trying to write a new song, because you can do whatever you want, really.
I just run out of ideas.
I would agree with that. There comes a point where when you're trying to stretch the boundaries, you can only see the boundary at a certain point, if that makes sense.
Especially if you keep yourself in a genre type box. If you're like, all right, come out as a band, you're like, all right, we're gonna only be thrash metal, we're only gonna play fast riffs, we'll have some skank beats and stuff in our songs, and stick to it. Sure, it might be fun for the first few records or whatever, but then if you do become a somewhat successful band, you're playing that all the time, and your fans expect that from you every year or every 2-3 years when you release an album. You're gonna get burnt out making the same fucking music, even if you love it.
That's how we got the Black record from Metallica.
Yeah, there you go.
Even if like your intention is to push genre boundaries, you still run into the problem of, all right, we pushed it this far last time. What do we do this time? Do we do the same sound? Do we try to push this farther?
There's only so many times you can reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And like reinventing the wheel one time is a difficult challenge. Reinventing the wheel 6 times is infinitely harder, because at what point are you able to keep pushing the boundaries? There's only so many times you can redo something to where you yourself are hitting creative limits.
And at what point does it become disingenuous? Like, at what point are you trying to feed into audience expectations, and at what point are you trying to push the envelope because you feel the need to truly express your opinion?
Yeah.
And by that point, I'd feel like, that band's losing their identity if they're trying to push the envelope that far just for an audience or
for the sake of pushing the envelope.
That's fair, but there are bands like Ministry where their entire brand is pushing the envelope to the point of discomfort.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. And it's what you expect at that point, even if the sound isn't what you expect.
Yeah, bands who do that, I would say, they don't lose their identity. Mr. Bungle does crazy fucking...
Mr. Bungle? Fucking Kim Dracula. Kim Dracula could come out with anything at this point because they're combining sounds that you have heard before in a way that you didn't expect. And it's a weird balance of meeting expectations and exceeding.
Has Kim Dracula released anything since the album?
I don't believe so.
I couldn't tell you, but I'll check that right now.
Mr. Bungle's a fascinating case because their brand started out as pushing boundaries. And then by their third album, they actually got a little bit more pop. And then when they reunited in 2020, it was like one of the most basic thrash albums you can make. It's its own kind of pushing boundaries to be this avant-garde band and then just go back to your roots and make some 2 brain cell music and have fun with it.
Kim Dracula hasn't released anything since A Gradual Decline in Morale.
That's what I'm curious is how one would follow up that kind of